Let's talk about trimming your cups. Now, we trim cups so that for a couple reasons. One, the foot is a functional consideration, right? It helps take some of the weight out of the cup, and also it helps elevate the cup so whether you have something hot or cold in it, it's not touching the surface of the table directly. The foot is what's in contact with the surface of the table. And so that can help keep your beverage cold or hot longer and also protect the table surface. So with your cup project, you have the option to trim half and then leave the other half flat-footed. And I'm going to show you both techniques. So for trimming your cups, you want them to be leather hard, which means that you can pick it up, no problem. It's not altering the cup, it's not leaving fingerprints. All right, leather hard. And then you also want a couple tools. So I like to have a large and small loop tool, as well as a throwing stick, a damp sponge, and a lug of clay. Let's get trimming. For a cup that I want to have just a flat foot, all right, I'm just going to flip it over and clean up the bottom of it a little bit. So that might mean that I would take a rib over it or my sponge and just clean up anything on the bottom. Like here I have a couple divots. So I'm going to kind of smooth those in. I might even take some clay and fill those in. All right, and then I'm going to use my thumb just to very gently, or actually it might be better to use your sponge, to just very gently create just a small concave curve in the bottom of the foot. So it's probably hard to see on the video, but just know I'm using a little bit of pressure just to create a nice concave foot. And just clean that up a little bit. There we go. And now I'm going to go ahead and let this just sit upside down like this on a board until the foot dries up. Now, trimming a foot takes a little bit of skill. And so we're going to get practicing that. Now, what you have to do in order to trim, what we're gonna do is trim a foot. So we're gonna basically carve out a little bit from the center and clean up the sides. Now, in order to do this, we need to recenter the piece on the wheel. And so it's helpful because you can see on the wheel head there are already some circles to help you get your piece oriented. But you know, sometimes things get a little off center as we're taking things off the wheel or throwing, so that's not always foolproof. So what you can do is line it up as best as you think, and then you can use either your finger, and your finger will tell you, right, like it's touching, not touching, so it's a little bit off center in that direction, right? Or if it's helpful, I use my throwing tool if it's hard to tell with your finger. And if you just hold your throwing tool steady, you'll start to see where there's a line or where the tool is touching the piece and where it's not. So I look at and see where the tool left marks and where it didn't, and I move it opposite of the direction of where the tool left marks. All right. And so it might be a little bit of a back and forth until you're sure. Almost there. Okay. I'm just going to clean up my little cut marks here with a finger. All right. think that's it. So once you have it about where you think it's centered, go ahead and take some clay, and I make 3 lugs, or like short fat chunks of clay, right? Like 3 little logs, like this. And then I'm going to use them just very gently holding the top of the pot, and I'm pressing the clay around the rim, not into the rim. So I'm pressing like down into the wheel and letting the clay kind of very gently squish around the rim. And this should help keep the pot from shifting off center as I'm trimming. So when I'm trimming, I like to start, I use basically a big loop tool and a small loop tool, and I'm going to work large to small. So I'm just going to start with this big loop tool, and I'm just going to use it, and you can see that I'm keeping my elbow braced as always, and I'm actually, while I have one hand on the top, I've got it braced on this other hand. So again, always 2 hands touching to make sure everything stays nice and stable. And then I'm also going to, so I'm using this to kind of clean up that side a little bit, and then I'm also going to use it to clean up the top and level that out. And so, you know, one thing you can do to level out the top is use the tip of the tool to cut a spiral into it. All right. And it's best to keep your tool on an edge. You don't want it to necessarily be flat. You know, holding it flat like this can make it jump. So you want to be very careful. There we go. Once you get the top under control, see how I trimmed that spiral, and then I trimmed the spiral first using the edge of my tool, and then I went flat, and I was able to keep control of it that way. And now I have a nice level bottom. I'm just going to bevel this side a little bit, right? And now you can make your foot as fancy or not fancy as you want. And really it's only dictated by how much clay you have to carve. So, you know I threw this bottom about a 1/2 inch, so I don't want to take off more than 1/4 of an inch. So I'm being very mindful about how much I take off. If you're ever not sure, if you're like, ooh, I don't know if I took off too much, just very gently give that bottom a press with your thumbs. And you can see if you feel any give, you're probably getting too deep. But if there's no give, then you can keep trimming. All right, so I might go ahead and just give this little guy an elevated foot. So I usually like to mark with my tool about where I'm headed. And you know, I usually don't have my wheel spinning too fast. This is like medium high speed at most, but this is the medium speed. And so I kind of give myself a mark, like where do I want my foot to go? Like how, do I want a skinny foot? There we go. That's probably nice. That's about 1/4 of an inch for the foot. And so I've kind of given myself this marker of where I want to go, and so I'm just gonna start at the middle and work my way out with my tool to level out my foot from there. And this is just a very simple, very functional kind of foot. If you want to get more creative, you could work from the side, like, you know, maybe I want to have sort of a visual separation from the side, so I might carve a little bit off there. There we go. Right, and so that might be kind of interesting. And then just to finish it off, I'm going to take my damp sponge and just kind of use that to smooth out any rough spots. And from here, I would just sign it and then let my pot rest right like this, just to let that part that I just sponged dry a little bit. All right. Now, if you trim through a pot, if you trim through the bottom, that's it. It's, you really can't come back from that because of the compression of the clay. So just trash it and trim another one. And this is why it's important to throw more than you're going to turn in, because you might trim through the bottoms of a couple. But that's how you trim.